what is the process? Let's start with maybe the cure first, and then we can go to the vaccine. What's the actual process that people will go through to test and actually validate that, yes, there is something out there that can be a cure?
It's a long process. So you have very early studies in cultures, and then next you have a very small trials of 50 patients, and then you kind of keep rolling it up from there. The U.S. is very cautious, very regulated when it comes to studying and approving, the FDA approving of medications. And that has saved the U.S. in the past from certain medications being harmful, like thalidomide is a chemical that is actually very toxic to pregnant women. And so this was rolled out in Europe, but the U.S. said, wait, hold the brakes on that. And that turned out to be a good decision. In the situation of a pandemic, though, it kind of works against us because we don't have 6 months, a year, 18 months to be like, we're going to find a vaccine or a medication to treat this and go through all those proper steps, which we usually do. And so that's where, I've kind of been focusing on a treatment, potential treatment that's already widely available, known safety effect profile, and something that about 1 million people or so globally are already on. So if this could actually cure or help reduce the symptoms or reduce the amount of people that get infected with coronavirus, that could be huge. It wouldn't really, you could expedite those trials and that process much more quickly than developing a whole brand new treatment over the next 6 to 18 months.
Got it. And then is it similar process for the vaccine as it is for the cure? Or is there a completely different process with different timelines and complexities?
I would say a vaccine would even probably take a little bit longer, especially if you talk, because now you're talking about rolling this vaccine out to a large number of people. So if you're going to all of a sudden start making like the flu vaccine where you're recommending just about everyone in America or in the world gets this vaccine, you don't want to mess that up, right? Whereas a treatment, you can be like, okay, well, this person's already sick. We know that there's a 3% mortality rate. We know that this treatment has a very favorable side effect profile potentially. And so it's much easier to prove that as opposed to rolling out something that's in healthy people that we don't, the side effect profile has been studied less. Because there's always that concern with the virus. There's always that concern with the vaccine that weakened virus could mutate into a harmful virus. And then you don't want to die from the vaccine.
Got it. And I think that I saw, this is like the Imperial College paper that recently came out. Their whole thing was, even if you start identifying what you think could be a vaccine, it's got that really long time frame, kind of 12 to 14 months, they said at the earliest, until you could confirm it. And it sounds like a lot of that, similar to what you're saying, revolves around just like, you can't go tell people this can save you from COVID-19, but oh, by the way, there's 20% chance it could kill you at the same time. Right, you've got to
for sure. That
it's actually safe for the human.
Right. The first three in medicine is do no harm, right? So you don't want to introduce them to something that's going to actually be more harmful to them, just maybe living out the course of the disease.
Got it. Okay. And so talk to us a little bit about the potential cures that you're looking at. I know that there's some encouraging, I think reports and data that is starting to come out now as to how there may be some things that will actually cure this or at least reduce the symptoms.
Yeah. So what I've been focusing on with one of my colleagues is basically it was about 2 weeks ago now. I started seeing evidence coming out in guidelines and from China and South Korea about chloroquine being a potential treatment for coronavirus. And started doing a little bit more digging into that. There was some mechanisms of action that showed how hydroxychloroquine or hydroxychloroquine, I'm going to kind of use them interchangeably. They're very similar drugs, and I can talk about the differences in a little bit. But it has mechanisms to decrease viral replication in cells and actually eliminate that process entirely, at least in vitro. And they studied this in the SARS version of coronavirus. And so there's already a base of in vitro studies for that. This kind of idea, which wasn't really talked about yet, about chloroquine being a treatment for coronavirus, was kind of justified in my mind when I started to see that the United Kingdom banned export of the active pharmaceutical ingredients in chloroquine. China did similar. they essentially announced in early February, look, the priority, they brought everyone back from the Chinese New Year early and said, hey, look, we need you to produce chloroquine in high volume. We're going to stop all exports of this. And we need to prioritize Wuhan in our own country to make sure that we can stop this. And then in March 9th, I had been in contact with pharmacies. And one of the pharmacists I contacted the manufacturer, Rising Pharma, of chloroquine, and announced and told us there's a national shortage of it. And so all these things in my mind was like, basically triggered, there's something big going on behind the scenes. Either they think chloroquine may be an effective treatment or it already potentially is an effective treatment. And so that's when I started talking about it on Twitter and to a lot of colleagues. And this is when one of my colleague on Twitter contacted me and said, hey, I've been studying chloroquine for a number of years. It looks like, I know the mechanism of action behind this very well. I have a paper that I put together. Take a look at it and see what you think. And I looked at it, added some clinical elements to it. I was actually already familiar with chloroquine on a clinical level because one of the main side effects is vision loss. You can have, it's very rare, but you can have vision loss from it. And so I've seen a lot of patients that were on it. And so I was able to add those elements to it and more of a clinical, impression of it. And again, that's because I was an ophthalmologist. So that's why I saw those patients. And we released that paper and it got a ton of attention. It was retweeted by Elon Musk shortly thereafter, and it just kind of blew up from there. And we were contacted by the press, the media. My co-author, so Greg Regano, has now been on the Laura Ingraham show. He was on Tucker Carlson last night. I think he was on Glenn Beck today as well. And it's, it's starting to become a little bit more justified. So what we had was this kind of summary of all this evidence, I think, to show that chloroquine might be an effective treatment. And then what I announced yesterday, which was we've been in contact with Didier Raoult, this very famous infectious disease doctor, MD, PhD out of France. And he's been studying this for the last few weeks as a treatment for patients with coronavirus. And he had very positive results. It was a small study, just about 36 people that stayed enrolled till the end. But it showed that the combination of hydroxychloroquine plus azithromycin. So again, hydroxychloroquine is like chloroquine. It just actually has a safer side effect profile. So it's kind of used more often than chloroquine. But it showed a very small sample size still, but showed 100% decrease in viral load in 100% of the patients who received both hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. And so this is a small sample size, but very positive results regarding this treatment method. And this was announced by my co-author on Tucker Carlson last night. And it seems like Donald Trump reacted to that as he, in his press conference today, he specifically talked about anti-malarial medications, hydroxychloroquine, how this needs to be expedited and cut through the red tape if possible to make physicians feel comfortable in using this drug to treat COVID-19 positive patients.